Gracias.
Secreto de Murillo.
El- bueno,
Señoras y señores, muy buenos días.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We would like to welcome to the dialogue with the civil society within the framework of the 11th high-level dialogue between Colombia and the U.S. that since yesterday and today has been taking place in the Palace of San Carlos at the Chancellor, and today in the Hotel Hilton in Bogota. We would like to welcome all the attendees, especially the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Luis Gilberto Murillo, and the person and Francisco Palmieri, who is now lead the delegations that have organized this meeting. We would also like to welcome all the different representatives of the social civil society communities in the U.S. and Colombia that nowadays are here with us. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. The dialogue with civil society wants to acknowledge the participation of civil society as the main stakeholders in the bilateral relationships, giving the topic of this meeting. This space that's been led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Colombia has been built along with the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, the Vice Presidency of Colombia, and also the Colombia Embassy in Washington and the U.S. Embassy in Bogota. And to all the organizers, thank you so much for all this joint effort. And the idea of today's meeting is to generate a dialogue, a space for dialogue and participation with the civil society, wanting to encourage reflections, to share knowledge, and to promote a greater awareness about the acknowledgement of climate change, as well as the different challenges that the ethnic communities have to face regarding climate and the environment. And the dialogue will be hybrid with simultaneous translation and live translations in Spanish in the social media of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and also in English in the networks in Bogota. We would like to welcome everybody that it's part of this broadcasting through the webpage of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as of our accounts in X, Facebook, and YouTube, where you can find us as at Cancillería Col. Follows as a host the Chancellor, Luis Gilberto Murillo, is going to give a welcoming words and as a way to open up this dialogue with the civil society.
Buenos días.
Good morning. I would like to welcome you to this dialogue with the civil society within the frameworks of the high-level dialogues between the U.S. government and the Colombian government. And I would like to thank all the team, from the U.S. government, from the DOS, and from the different agency in the U.S. and also the U.S. Embassy in Colombia. And I would like to thank them for this effort of making real this dialogue. And likewise, I would like to highlight the work and the leadership of our embassy in the U.S. But also, it's very important, also how we're focusing towards the Americas with Alejandro Rueda and Lina Ibanez, and also and her team with Ana Maria Bedoya and also Alejandra Roballo. Maybe there is a person that I'm not mentioning, but the truth is that you've done a wonderful work, and I would like to acknowledge you today. I would like to greet Honorable Mr. Francisco Palmieri, who is responsible for business in the U.S. Embassy and also a champion for Colombia's causes. I would also like to welcome his joint secretary for democracy and human rights and work of U.S. state, and also all their teams that accompany them. And I would like to give a very special welcome to the friend Larry Santa, which is the Deputy Assistant Administrator in USAID. Yes, right? Yes, right. You are, right? You have so many important roles. You are a great friend. You are the person that leads the Colombian causes. And I do hope that from there, I'm sure that you're going to keep on supporting us. Okay, we want to make him Colombian now. And likewise, I would like to acknowledge the participation of Mr. Gabriel Garcia Peña, who is the ambassador of Colombia in the U.S., and Ms. Laura Santa Coloma, who is the Director of Environmental Justice in the Justicia, that is an organization that's a long-standing organizations. We have Mr. Nestor Garzón, who is the Director of Climate Change on the Environment and Sustainable Development. And thank you so much for helping us out in this activity. Mr. Orlando Marrayo, who is the Higher Counselor of the Indigenous National Organization, ONIC. And also Mr. Dailer Montoya, who is the General Coordination of the Bonobo Florencia, who is an environmental youth network. Mr. Mateo Estrada, who is the coordinator for climate change of OPIAC. And also Mr. Alexander Rodriguez, who is the guardian of the Atrato, and it's a community advisor for the Cocomasia in my department, the wonderful department of Chocó. And also Ms. Andrea Lloreda, who is the Foreign Affairs Advisors of the Embassy of Colombia in the U.S., and Ms. Joe Wagner, who is the co-founder and the director of the Descendants Project organization, that it's an organization that works for the rights of Afro-descendant communities in the U.S. And also Ms. Lady Bernaza, who is the Associations of Producers and of cocoa in Caleta Viento Libre, and all the other representatives of the Colombian and U.S. governments, and also the civil society representatives, Cristina Spinel, that comes from the U.S. She is the president of the Human Rights Committee in Washington, all her team that's here. And also Marco Romero, I also saw him around from CODES. And also Ricardo, that it's next to Marcos. We have so many friends. And we were talking with the ambassador Palmieri that we have Giovanni Cordova, who I also see him here. I mean, we were with our bases. We were with the grassroots. And also all the special guests and all the officers and colleagues from the Foreign Affairs Ministry that are here with me. And I would like to tell you that I feel so pleased about this dialogue, because this was an initiative that we had with the U.S. government, especially in the UN, the embassy in Washington, and in Bogota. The two embassies decided to make this high-level dialogue. They wanted to have the participation of the society as such, the civil society, the peoples, but also the business, the private sector, the business people, which are very dynamic in maintaining a very solid and deep relationship. And that's why it's an honor to be here participating in this dialogues. We are in a very crucial point in the history of the planet, where climate change and the loss of biodiversity request our immediate action. But not only this, but we are in a change of time, and there's a deep transformation in all aspects of national and global associations, and Colombia has a very powerful voice for this discussions in the context of bilateral relationships in the U.S. We have a very important platform so that we can feel this partnership in a global context. One of the pillars of the new strategy of the new plan, Vida Colombia, that we've agreed with the U.S., it's associated with the response to the climate crisis, with energy transition, protection to nature, peace with nature, and the protection of biodiversity in a context of social justice and for the communities, but also in a context of equality. And that's why Colombia has assumed that this year, has decided to be the president of the Conference of the Parties of Ecological Biodiversity. It's going to be the host countries in Cali. And this COP16, that is, as it's well called, we've called it the COP of the people, because we want that the ministers, the chiefs of states will talk with the people. and that Colombia is the platform, and to be able to have this global dialogue. The Colombian government is fulfilling its commitments of becoming, in a life, in a potency for life, in a potency for peace, and also a potency for democracy. We are focused in an environmental diplomacy that promotes the peace with nature, and also the role of the peoples, of the communities, and also the environment. And this is something that it's done, and within the framework, the diplomacy that it's moved by the people, and also the people, because the people is what it sustains this bilateral relationship with the U.S., that it's a strategic relationship, that it's a special relationship, that it's a very solid and powerful relationship, that it's been very useful. And I want to finish off, and I just want to tell you that this relationship has supported different sectors in Colombia. And not long ago, we were talking about the role that the country has had, the role of the country, and the model that Colombia has turned in the care for internally displaced people, people displaced by violence. And I do remember that we were talking with Marco and Ambassador Palmieri that many years ago, 25 years ago, and with Marco and with Cristina and with Jorge Rojas and others, we were knocking the doors in diplomacy, the diplomacy of human rights, the diplomacy of people, so that the center of the bilateral relationships where the affairs of the people that have been displaced by violence. Cores was a baby back then. And nowadays I've seen how it's grown, and how today the care to the displaced population, to the population displaced by violence, it's part of that relationship. And also the role of USAID and other U.S. government agents. And therefore, there is an impact of this relationship. And the other impact, it's the example of the Afro-descendants and the indigenous communities. And many leaders, Carlos Rosero and Zulia Mena, especially Oscar Gamboa, that back then we were called him a chancellor, and also with the support of the Human Rights Committee. We also wanted to talk about the Palenqueros, indigenous Black Afro-descendant affairs as the center of these relationships, because they were invisible in the bilateral relationship, but the bilateral relationship was important to set this at the center of the agenda. There were times in which it would seem that the U.S. was more concerned, with the Afro-descendant affairs that are on our government, and I wanted to acknowledge this. And in all areas, there were nowadays, this is a central issue, and this is one of the center. And the Secretary Blinken was here and said, we're going to foster. We're going to foster the ethnic chapter of the peace agreement, so that you can see the relevance, and that we can see it, how important it is. And also the environmental affairs. But I really like that this dialogue, it's going to happen, with this framework, and that's why this government has decided to set the people's diplomacy, the diplomacy of people, as a central axis. And we can see the director Elena, that comes from the Huitoto, community. She's the director of the Diplomacy Academy for the first time in history. Another very important element. It's that the people and their ancestral languages are going to be part of the academia, and also 86 or more languages that we have, including the old Swahili from Palenque as well. Because so the people from Palenque, we have a people from Palenquera as the consul in Washington, and therefore the foreign affairs needs to resemble the Colombian diplomacy, and also the foreign affairs from Colombia. Colombian policy has to see the different policies. It's the freedom, but also we have to show the different scenarios, and this is not just exclusive of it's not that we have democracy in the sense we need to represent everybody. And that's the message of President Petro and the Vice President Francia Marquez. I want to finish off, and I wanted to tell you that our foreign affairs, of course, it's a policy that is focused It's focused in the promotion of peace, in the promotion in all its scenarios, in the promotion of life, and in its all scenarios, and also in the promotion of democracy within a context of social justice, and that's the axis that moves us around. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Now we're going to listen to the person responsible for business in the U.S., Mr. Francisco Palmieri, with his words about the dialogue with the civil society. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm so grateful for your warm welcome of the Chancellor Murillo. Okay, Chancellor, it sounds great, It sounds great. He's an activist. He's a human rights advocate. He's a governor. He's a minister. He's an ambassador for the U.S. and now he's a chancellor. I mean, he's been during this all the life, and to share this with you, it's something that makes me so proud. And I can see a great future, I can see a great future. And we just maybe need one more, maybe you need one more title and that's it, or one more role. And therefore, I'm so grateful of being here with all of you today. And I would like to acknowledge once again the commitment of the Chancellor and also of each of you, and regarding human rights, and also the peace building efforts, and also environmental sustainability here in Colombia. And this vision, it's crucial for the development of the country. And the event today, it's so important, and because it highlights the links between the human rights and the protection of the environment. It provides us a solid and deeper understanding of the relationship with peace and also prosperity in Colombia. And it reminds me that during the we can see when there was the opening ceremony, there was an advocate of the human rights of the Northern Coast, and a community told me that human rights, that the protection of human rights starts with the protection of the environment. And okay, to be able to share a quote from an environmental leader in our recent 18th annual consultations on human rights, that ultra defender says, okay, the preservation of human environment, it's only sustainable when it's based on social equality. And we can see that environmental sustainability, it's a joint priority of the government of Colombia and also of the U.S., and we work together in this very tight with the Colombian organizations and with a lot of the people that participate today in our cooperation. It's in this very important priority. We need to share a commitment with inclusivity, trying to acknowledge the need that the voices of the civil society are there regarding the debate of human rights here in Colombia. And we can say that the big relevance of the voices of the Afro-Colombian voices in the and also the farming communities extends to the next World Conference about the preservation of biological diversity, of which Colombia will be a host in October this year. And however, as part of this conversation, we need to acknowledge the large amount of human rights advocates and of the environment that have been murdered last year, 181 in total, according to the Ombudsman of the people of Colombia. We're committed of working with you and the Colombian government to be able to prevent future threats and future murders. We need to collaborate with the civil society in this struggle against deforestation, and also to promote sustainable practices, which at the same time it's going to help us not only to reduce climate change, but also to reduce poverty, illegal mining, and also violence, and against the leaders of civil society. We would also like to acknowledge the unequal impact of climate change and deforestations in ethnic communities. And we can say that the initiatives for local development that are led by these communities not only approach discrimination, the historical discrimination, but also help us as a very strong element to overcome all the environmental challenges. We can say that the knowledge and experiences are critical, and I would like to take advantage of today's session to share ideas, to share knowledges, and for a much more powerful and sustainable future for all the Colombians, and therefore you can count that the U.S. Embassy it's going to be there supporting and also contributing to everything that we can for this struggle. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Palmieri. We would like to thank for the two high-level delegates from both countries, both Colombia and the U.S., for their warm welcome, and we would like to proceed with the methodology that today we're going to implement. We can say that the dialogue with civil society within the framework of the 11th high-level dialogue between Colombia and the U.S., it's made up by two discussion panels. The first one, it's going to be an environmental justice panel and peace with nature within the context of climate change, that it's going to take place from 9:30 to 10:20 morning. And therefore, the second panel, it's going to be intersection between environmental justice and ethnic racial justice, and so that we can have ancestral knowledges and compensation that's going to take place between 11 and 11:50. And therefore, we can say that at 12:10, we are going to do the closing ceremony of this event. Okay, having completed this event for the opening and closing, we are going to start to the first discussion panel, that it's going to be called Environmental Justice and Peace with Nature within the context of climate change. And therefore, I'm going to ask about the space dialogues and exchange of regarding the acknowledgement in nature as a very vulnerable effect for climate change, and also for the process of a very harmonious living between, and in such a way that a very inclusive perspective for peace. And therefore, and for this first panel, I would like to invite the moderator, Andrea Lloreda, and that works for Foreign Affairs in the Embassy of Colombia in the U.S. And we can say that Madame Lloreda is a lawyer from Universidad Externa de Colombia, and she also works in Georgetown, and she is a Fulbright scholarship from and Ms. Lloreda. And okay, it's an honor for me to be able to be here to moderate such an important panel about peace with nature within the framework of climate change. And as the Chancellor Luis Gilberto Murillo Ruta was saying, and the person responsible for business of the U.S., we can say that the response to a climate crisis is a very priority and critical element in the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Colombia. And above all, after the recent launch of the strategy Vida Colombia, that as Chancellor Murillo will said, one of the pillars is the response to climate change, peace with nature, and also the protection of biodiversity and nature within a context of social peace. And for this, as we talked yesterday in the environmental discussion between the U.S. and Colombia, that's why we needed to acknowledge and to highlight the leading role of the communities, of the ethnic farming communities, of all the rural Colombia, and in the preservation of the more sensitive ecosystems, and what's going to be the second most biodiverse country in the world, which is Colombia. And it's because of this, within this context, that we create the diplomacy of the peoples, or we acknowledge it as a space where we can join efforts between the state, the civil society, and we can together build a more sustainable future, and we can have this environment for the future generations that we need so much. And we can say that this diplomacy of the peoples becomes so relevant. And when we want to do the COP16 in our country this year, that it's the COP of the people, and and we talk about the peace for nature. And they can say today, peace with nature, environmental justice. And we can say, and we're going to see how it's applied, and we can see how this ethnic leaders about how to apply this peace with nature. And in this sense, I would like to welcome the panelists for today, for this panel. And I would allow myself to call Dalila Maestre. Dalila is a mining engineer, and she leads the Arhuaca community. She is part of the Indigenous Confederation Tairona. From what she leads in the incidents of the Arhuaca people to promote the rights of the land and also to preserve the cultural heritage. And I would also like to call Laura Santa Coloma. And she works in environmental justice of the Justicia, and she also works in the environmental ministry of the University of Palermo in Argentina, and also she has a PhD of the same university. And also, I would like to talk about Teo Estrada, and she is a leader of the ethnic group Siriana of Baupés, and that for more than 4 years. She works in climate change and international cooperation of the Association of Indigenous Communities of the Amazon Zopiac, and he is an expert in climate change and environment. And we're going to use Laira Montoya, who is a youth leader, that is the general coordinator of the Florencia Nodule of Environmental Youngsters, and Tyler, he is farming And also, she's a specialist in environmental law, and he's looking forward to a master's in environmental energy. As a way to start our panel, and we're going to start with the same topic of which is peace with nature. That's the first topic. Dalila.
Comunidades Aruac.
The Arhuaco communities have been a reference in Colombia, kind of pioneers and promoters of peace with nature, and that need of not having conflict and taking care of the environment as a subject of law and subject to protection. Please tell us, how do Arhuaco communities define that concept of peace with nature, and what are specific actions that you consider are essential to reach such peace, especially in climate change context that we are living today? Good morning, all. I am Dalila, as being introduced from Arhuaco community, one of the 4 peoples that live in Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta. It's good to be here, but in this context, it's also interesting to let know the communities, how everything has turned around nature since we existed, from all indigenous peoples, and each one of them have their own mission to carry out in their territory. So before COP existed, energy transition and climate change concepts came around, we're already doing that exercise under our traditional cultural and environmental context, because with Mother Earth we are all one being. Starting from there, we have been carrying out this exercise on a constant basis of being in peace with nature, defending nature, and that's why in different scenarios and different leaders of each one of our peoples, we are always aiming on how to strengthen the different organizations and how to comply with that exercise that we receive, that is to defend Mother Nature. It is the home where we all live, that is for everybody, and all of elements that conform Mother Earth, such as water, is for all of us. That's one part. The other one is that now that we are living an energy transition, it has been quite important to have the participation of all communities, because it is there where we can know the realities of different territories. It is there where different organizations, NGOs, can be part of those communities that work directly with different projects, especially when we are there to strengthen a particular exercise. Another important point is how energy transition has affected all of us. What has been going on with the mining corridors, as they are called, and how climate change is impacting, especially in this scenario of energy transition. What is going to happen with the minerals and ores that are being exploited? So, how to take care of nature? How can you contribute to that? How can I contribute to that? So how can have exchange of knowledge? It may be a constant exercise, and how from the scientific side can we contribute to the different territories to strengthen those capacities and skills when it comes to environmental issues. Even though it's true that Arhuaco people, we have our own conservation policy for each one of us, other factors inside where the Arhuaco people have been victims of many conflicts that have taken place in our territory. So to be at peace with nature is to be at peace with all. How to heal the territory that has been wounded as a result of this conflict, and that is part of our constant exercise. So in each community, in each indigenous people, we have that approach. Now that we are living the energy transition and living climate change, it's important that we all know that context, that reality. How can you contribute to each one of these indigenous populations with the participation, of course, of our peoples? It is an issue of policy, no, to strengthen the different organizations, because when we have persons dedicated to execute certain aspects, we lose the opportunity to strengthen the organization, especially administrative aspects to start with. One of the calls here is to say the territory is for all of us, the world is for all of us, whether everywhere where there's an indigenous people, water is there for all of us. So this is kind of invitation we are making for you, invitation that comes from our ancestors. But now we have the task to make that real. We need to continue defending nature, water. We need to continue defending the environment, the hydric reserves, and how to take care. It's not only through conservation schemes and plans, but there are others that can be put in place, and we are willing to share that knowledge to you and to different indigenous peoples to strengthen the capacity of different organizations that work and operate in our territories. This is a home for everybody. Let's take care of that, and that is the invitation of the Arauco people for you. Thanks, Dalilia. Now, considering your profession, you're a mining engineer, and you were telling us that it was precisely within the framework, or let's say, your personal vocation, ethnic vocation, taking care of environment, the Sierra Nevada, where your people live, and you decided to carry out studies, mining engineer there. So how do you see that relationship between protection of the environment and the development that could imply the exploitation of natural resources that exist in your area? As you well said, one of the most important aspects that indigenous peoples can contribute with is preservation. But let's take one step forward. Now you see that relationship between sustainable economic development and protection of the environment. Thank you. It's true that when you love your territory, you want to keep it in good shape, so to speak. And we need to go on a par with the economic development of the country at the same time. But how, with our studies, we can protect and strengthen our people, that's another aspect. Now, in my case, I decided to study mine engineer because I said I need to know that issue very especially, how the mine operations take place, how the behavior, how the operations contaminate or pollute, because we, peoples of the Sierra Nevada, we were seeing know how many mining operation licenses were being applied, different quarries extracting different type of materials exist there. So what to do? So the four peoples, the people of the Sierra, got together in the CTC now to deal with that. Now, when it comes to energy transition, personally, I feel that energy transition is being seen as the final solution to be in peace with nature. But that is not at all true. Somehow we will get rid of carbon, but other minerals come to replace that, to continue the development of countries and development of different technologies, medicine, mobile phones and Wi-Fi. So it is something that we need to be very careful of, how this energy transition is going to be managed, what is going to be proposed with the new codes that are being updated and around that, around mining operations. But what is how that's going to impact indigenous people? Foreign companies don't have full responsibility for the most part, and we can see that in mining corridors. So what is going to happen? It's not only something to show for other nations, but no, something that should be part of the territory for the protection of indigenous communities around the country. How do we impact? To see that really reflected in the energy transition and the mining operation, where indigenous peoples can participate in the final decisions. It's something that is should be real, not something that's stamped on paper and forgotten. That's how I see that issue. But as indigenous peoples, the mining operations and the cosmovision do not fit in, do not have a room for it, because coal and or carbon actually is part of your organism and body. And Mother Earth, and you can see, that now we are seeing hurricanes more often, and Mother Earth is agonizing. So when all this stops, so this responsibility for all of us to take care of Mother Earth, each one should contribute with one grain of sand, as we said. And how do we put in place solutions based on nature? No, Mother Earth is dying, and we are seeing that, and it's a responsibility for all of us to help. And so, the invitation is to cooperate. Your families, your homes, have a role to play, because it's not only an indigenous cosmovision. No, it's actually something that pertains all of us. And if we don't do anything, we don't know what's going to happen. That's our vision. Thank you, Dalila, for that important opinion, and to bring to us part of your cosmovision and your concept of peace with nature, and how to carry out that energy transition without affecting nature, and to have the participation of all the indigenous people. Now I go to my second panelist, Laura Santa Coloma from Justice. Laura, let's move now to the concept of environmental justice from the civil society organization's point of view, like yours you lead. How the evolution of this concept has taken place up to the Declaration of the Rights of Nature and Climate Justice, and what implications this recognition have for the application of environmental public policies in Colombia. Many thanks. Many thanks for having this dialogue, because we, as civil society, need as much scenarios as possible to tell you what's going on. We are a research center. We are a think tank that basically works on human rights and the strengthening of civil society and law. And we have a work to do with people in the field out there. And it's in that position that I would like to tell you about the theoretical, about environmental justice concept, and in practice how the state is managing that, what it is doing, and what problems we as civil society think that it requires urgent attention. So I want to tell you the environmental law and justice is something that the court has defined, and it has two elements. One element is the equitable distribution of costs and benefits, that's a matter of justice, and environmental participation. Environmental participation has its own special characteristics, different from the participation that we know, like the go to the ballots and vote. Environmental participation have a special, different characteristic because it's collective to start with. It affects links in the territory and peoples in the territory, so it requires specific measures. And that is there where you can see the different aspects of equitable distribution of cost and benefits. That, let me tell you, last year we saw in Constitutional Court that the role of the state is not clear, how the state is understanding that of a type of justice, and it's applying environmental justice. So Constitutional Court put in place several tools and basically said that no social group can have non-proportionate load or reasons of gender or socioeconomic or race, and that is not clear in practice, because what we see is that the most vulnerable populations are the ones that are bearing the heaviest load. And of course, with the exploitation of natural resources across the country. And that is there where we can move to the second point, participation. And their problems are serious as well. On one hand, Constitutional Court back in 2018 ruling SU 095 recognized a constitutional right when it comes to environmental participation across the country, specifically when it comes to the exploitation of national non-renewable resources. It's something that we have not overcome so far, on one hand. On the other hand, as civil society, we have lived in our flesh, the difficulties to access environmental public information. We need to go from entity to entity asking for information that suddenly could be good for us, sometimes not. We are lawyers. We need to work with maps. We need to hire people specialists in that. And if we realize that entities do not have the same cartographic information, they contradict each other with statistics and other type of figures. So there's no access of information and there's no participation. So in terms of environmental justice and this idea of the Constitutional Court for Environmental Justice, the state has an enormous job to do. And of course, Constitutional Court has done a very important job from theoretical at least, and has shown how this country environmental justice has evolved from an epicentrical point of view, then non-centrical point of view, and at this moment there is a kind of solidarity between human being and environment or nature, so that not, let's say, have an impact on the human race, addressing effects of climate change. And we are living here in Colombia a moment of political judicial scenario, if you allow me to say, based on egocentrism, that idea of recognizing the rights of nature. So the real info around Rio Trato comes about in 2016, and then Supreme Court of Justice said the Amazon is also subject to law, and then they start to work with rivers and natural parks, Salamanca National Park, etc. An enormous strength to recognize the rights of ecosystem biomass as subjects of law. And then you can say, okay, when you stop and think what's going on, what happened? And it is there when you can say, okay, let's go back and check what has been happening, because something that promised a lot in the beginning, judicially speaking, what is going on? And we can see today the environmental promise not to do exactly with legal aspects. State, of course, has a good legal judicial system in place, but there are serious problems at the same time, because while the state is changing constantly in respect to environmental policies, climate change and mitigation has brought structural changes. So we see in the territory serious problems associated to that. For instance, to that trend of incentives to take care of the territory. But the people living there don't know what that means. What are the conservation agreements? What are the legal protections? How much is going to last? Nobody knows for certain. And we don't. By the way, I must recognize that. We haven't been able to understand what's the real purpose or intention. What happens with the intention of regularizing the occupation of vulnerable peasants in areas of forest protected areas according to law number 2? In the meantime, the criminal code established the crime for deforestation. And on the other hand, they continue to protect that area. So you go back and see how human rights, for instance, add on a cross-cutting basis, and the environmental aspect is the same. For many, there's social conflicts associated to that, especially to extractive projects. The environmental licensing doesn't have a focus on human rights, doesn't have a focus on climate change. And that, of course, is troublesome, because big projects end up producing serious problems, such as those that we know in Salvajina, Hidroituango, El Quimbo, etc. Big projects with big problems at the same time associated to human rights. I could go on with this type of examples, more and more examples, but really I want to call your attention about very specific things. We are living a time of reflection, new approaches to environmental justice. You allow me to say one associated to refer to intergeneration, where intergeneration, first of all, what does imply? Only the environmental? When are we going to speak with the young population? Our democratic system doesn't have today a scenario, binding one. For the young population, they cannot elect a representative to the House of Representatives. Yes, they have their own ID card, but they cannot participate fully in the political life. And if they don't participate fully in political life with real incidents and impacts, so how are we going to engage in an intergenerational dialogue? There are numberless examples in this country about that, where there have been pacts, covenants, and agreements, a sentence or ruling for the Amazonia. The judge orders that it is a task pending, and it has other dimensions, in health and pensions, etc. Another type of justice is the interspecies justice, and there are other issues associated to that. Quite interesting. How do we relate ourselves with other living beings? And all this, at the end, also is something that has been challenged by the Constitutional Court, and that is the sustainable economic development model for Colombia, the optimal one. And I close my intervention by saying that there is a need to restate what is the contents that as civil society, a political content we want to provide to sustainable development. In the context of climate change, of energy transition, that is repeating once more the defects of the traditional extractivist economic model, but that requires of a new vision. Many thanks, Laura, for your that tour, the legal and social aspect to fully understand the environmental justice come to the rights of nature. And to thank you for touching that intergenerational dialogue and justice to include the young ones in that type of dialogue and decision-making process. And I go to a third panel member, Daniel Montoya. He is a young leader, environmental activist. Dyler, as Coordinator General of Nueva Florencia, of the National Network for Environmental Young Persons, can you share with us the most effective strategy have been implemented to generate awareness and promote commitment of community when it comes to the protection of the environment? And here, once more, what are the challenges you have been confronting? Good morning. And in the Amazon, we have been saying a lot and showing a lot at the same time. However, very few persons, young ones, have raised their voices to tell our real history. I come from Florencia, Caquetá, the Golden Gate of the Colombian Amazon and young capital of the Amazon. Why that and why the importance of the young ones? There are over 60,000 young people living in this municipality, and in this part of the country, there is a transition that goes from the Andean mountain range to the Amazon jungle. That is where our rivers are born, that bathe, so to speak, over 50 municipalities and nourish Mother Earth and nature of 9 countries that conform altogether the Pan-Amazon region. But these young people are victims of the conflict at the same time. Conflict that back in 2016 was supposed to end on the peace agreement, but we are living a risk of falling into that violence in rural areas in Colombia. And those young ones, for our allies in the United States, well, they are diverse, as you have them in your country, perhaps. But here, women, young indigenous, rural inhabitants. And we have dreams, and we dream of being the catalyst of transformations and carry out changes in our territory. And in that territory of the Pan-Amazon that gathers 9 countries, we want to make a call, of 1 million young ones that live there in the Amazon. We want it to be a strategic player, a vital player in the change. That's why Caquetá, that is denominated land of many waters, have a direct link with the entire world, because it is through Caquetá River, the main hydric affluent of Amazon River, that then goes into the Atlantic Ocean, and the rainforest that is called Amazon in the world regulates the climate globally. And that's why we today in Bogota, there are heat waves and no so many rain because we are tearing down the forest and we are disturbing the flying rivers, and that water flows in form of clouds and they condense and that's why we have rain in Bogota. If we want to have rains in Bogota, to have potable water, we need to protect the Amazon. But what is going on? Social economic conflicts. In the framework of that, we have illegal mining operations where there is a direct affectation to biodiversity and to public health, by the way, because mercury, is bioaccumulable and is used to extract oil, to refine oil. And this mercury affects young kids and teenagers, pregnant mothers, and of rural communities that live and producing neurodegenerative affectations and, of course, cancer sometimes. And there's a second conflict, illegal crops, not only coca, because even though this region is the third largest producer in Colombia of coca, coca is not the only illegal crop that has a presence. And nowadays we see that our rivers that for us are sacred are being used to illegally transport towards Brazil cannabis, strengthening illegal armed factions across the territory, and that by itself is a problem, not only for Colombia and U.S., but it is a problem that goes across borders. And deforestation and climate change. If we deforest, we produce greenhouse gases such as methane, carbon dioxide, that is going to affect and contribute to speed up climate change. And that million hectares that have been deforested in the Amazon, well, it's affecting the flying rivers. That, of course, is part of a non-sustainable productive scheme. And that's why those three social environmental conflicts turn around illegal economies. And to take peace to territories, we need to have peace with legality. And around those illegal activities, our young ones have fallen too. Forced recruitment and the use and utilization of minors for these illegal economies. That is to say, that the Colombian youth and the Amazon youth, we are placing the body, so to speak. And we don't want to continue in that position, contributing with the bodies, because there is no clear living project for our youth, and that means that illegal economies deform our culture. It makes our young ones take a rifle and you use an engine maybe to extract gold, or take an axe to cut down trees. And we, under those circumstances, we choose to build with our hands and not to destroy with our hands. And we decided not to have a rifle, but maybe a paintbrush to create art, or a pencil to research, or a photographic camera to show how a territory is. That's why we want the Amazon to be geostrategic in world politics, and to make sure that our young ones research, knowing the territory through our social research. We need to know about biodiversity, of course, but we also need to know about the ancestral culture of our elders that has given us the wisdom. And around that wisdom, we can promote proposed changes. We need environmental pedagogics, for instance, therefore. Young ones have gone from research and working on research. We have developed added value products to contribute to the Amazon economy. Economy with a specialized industry, a community industry that is in the powerful minds of the youth and helped aid by the wisdom of our elders. So it is a call to action. It is a call to have a global policy to think about the Pan-Amazon conformed by 9 countries. And let's say you ask one of the 9 that have a presence create a program with the same objective, the objective of preserving and protect the Amazon. That program could be called Young Amazon, for instance, or what we have called at work in Caqueta, that is Amazon for Humanity. Yes, Amazon for humanity. And that is what we want, let's say. And finally, you're making a call in respect to what we are doing. High added value products to take advantage of the young, agile minds and to can throw a light of hope. And while taking into consideration the generation that lived before us, aided by that wisdom and knowledge they are bringing to us, to change the minds and logics. There is going to be a pre-COP approach that we are having in Florence, and I invite the U.S. Embassy in Colombia and to the Foreign Affairs Office to be in front between 4 and 10 September, where we had the National Summit of City Mayors, and also the first Colombian Forum of the Youth for COP, because we are key strategic players for the protection of biodiversity, and we want that Florencia and the Amazon can be a world power of life. At the same time, we, the Colombian youth and Amazon youth, we want to be peace with nature. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Tyler. We will continuing with the topic of the Great Amazonia. I'm gonna give the floor to our last speaker, Mateo Estrada, who is going to be the leader of OPIAC, of the organizations of indigenous communities in the Amazon region, and whom I would like to ask, taking into account that the Amazon region is acknowledged worldwide as the lung of the world, that it's a big thing, and that the indigenous communities have been the safekeepers of this area for many years. And in the current context, what are the main impacts that climate change has impelled, on the Amazon communities, and likewise, what has been the experience with the economic incentives program to be able to promote this role of the keepers of the Amazon? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to thank you for the invitation to be here. Before going into topic, I would like to make some comments before. Okay, the indigenous in Colombia, we're not communities. We are indigenous peoples, and that's how we've been acknowledged by international right. And number two, and therefore, the indigenous community, the indigenous peoples in Colombia, we are decolonizing the words and what the society do. So that's why we talk about indigenous knowledge of a science, a social science. However you want to call it, but it's science. It's not a cosmovision. It's not witchcraft, as Miguel Polo says. No, we're not that. It's a science. And number three, and we, the Colombians, are funny, I know Mr. Morillo, that he was in the environment ministry, and I know him. And sometimes when you are old, you commit the same mistakes. And I love you so much. And I love the civil society so much that he never said, please excuse me, that I have to take care of something else. We don't do that in our Malocas. We don't leave. It's not for us to improve relationships. The elders say that the words that you say are worth nothing, not the advice that you give. What's worth, it's what you do. And therefore, having said this, sometimes you fix us, you fit us. I was listening, I was asking to the questions. For example, how has climate change affected us? You want like set us like into boxes, but our way of knowledge or our way of knowledge is comprehensive. Yeah, our thinking it's comprehensive. And we can say for us nature and even the concept of the right of animals or the rights of nature, that's something that's been there. And okay, I was saying it's that I was the one that said it for the first time. No. And we, for example, and what we have, the trees, the birds, everything, the big or the small, and they have the same value. Everybody has the same value. And for example, if you see the right of the animals, we can say that the cow, and that it's okay. For example, a cow is worth more than a cockroach, and a cockroach it's worth nothing, and we don't have that. And we can say everybody has the same value, and it all depends on the state where you are. And the other thing, it's the integrity, and of this way of thinking. It doesn't allow for to have like a bigger right or a smaller right. No, the right that governs us, the laws that govern us, it's the law of origin. But law of origin, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why I want to tell why I want to talk about the law of origin. It's everything. It's associated and related to life, because we talk about the thought of life, of the words of life, of the actions of life. Everything that we do is focused on life. And having said this, that how does this affects? How has climate change affected us? Somebody once told me, hey, what do we do to mitigate? How do we mitigate? And, climate change resilience. And sometimes I think that before talking, for example, sometimes I was listening before restoring nature. First, we need to restore the spirit, the words, and the thoughts of people. And that's related to education, that it's related with culture, that it's related with the principles, it's related with ethics. And that's why climate change, it's something that we manage through an ecological calendar. And that ecological calendar, it's what's giving us the guidelines about what do we need to do in each of those periods. And how should we feed it? How should we manage the relationship between people, amongst other people, and between other beings? And also based on this changes that we call climate change. And we can see the summer times, and we can see that the dry season in the Amazon River has been changing us. And we can say that the indigenous communities in their practices and adapt to reality, but they shouldn't change certain principles that when we change them, it would change the ways of the nature in the Amazon. This is like a family thing. And there are some principles that shouldn't be changed. You can adapt as much as you want, for example, respect. And if there's a loss of respect in a family, something is happening. There are some principles for life, for the Amazon region, that shouldn't be changed. Okay, what we have said, it's that when we talk about the Amazon region, in the case of the Colombian Amazon, I don't want to go to, delve into the other countries, but we can say that currently it's more or less 27 million hectares. And we always start when we talk about the proposals, when we talk with the government, and also with the other society. And we're in the words that we use. And for example, territory. And we can say that territory is seen as private property as we can say that this is like the government of the indigenous territory, and therefore, and currently we can see the territories, and as an environmental institution, and but we can see when they talk about the peoples, we can see how the indigenous authority, that's why we are talking with the ministries. Okay, I think that the minister needs to think. Yeah, because we like, acting up sometimes. And, okay, we can say that we as environmental, but we can say and therefore, the other thing, it's the mechanism, it's the development mechanisms that we talk at the. But we can say that, and we can see it as a planning instrument, as a policy, as the policy, and the principles of the law of origin. And finally, and this is covered in the indigenous knowledge, and that's why I think that this type of dialogue, that's why I would like to thank the Chancellor, USAID, and everybody else. And we can say that the environmental topic has to be much more democratic. We need to increase participation. We need to go beyond the formalism that we have always said. Because if we bet between together we can, because the environmental topic, climate change, global warming, and it belongs to everybody, not. And therefore, we can say we would like to thank you. Maybe I know that I went beyond. Maybe. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. We have 5 minutes for questions. Okay, I want to apologize, Mateo, for the wrong usage of the language. I want to apologize. This is the diplomacy of the people, and we would like to improve it for a coming occasion. And therefore, I would, can someone help me out? Okay, thank you so much. I'm John Malia from the National Network of Auditors. I would to thank the Embassy of the U.S. because we still don't have, it's unfortunate, but we still don't have for a Colombian citizen. It's unfortunate because we believe in the people of the United States. It's unfortunate that we don't have in such an important country like Colombia where the environmental perspective, as money laundering, and therefore that Mr. Palmieri has apologized and gone. But I wanted to say, and I would like to ask, I was going to say that the people from the embassy can please listen to me. Can you please listen to me in a very humble manner? The problem of drug dealing that comes because of the Vietnam War, and they come here. And therefore, and I want to apologize because they come here as a disguise, because we can see that the anthropologists that were not anthropologists, they came here to take the cocoa leaf, that it's sacred, at least for the Colombian people. And therefore we can start, we can see this horrible thing, and we can start, but we can see that we've suffered so much violence, and that therefore the strategic violence where drug trafficking has used the language of combating communism, but at the same time to combat the empire. Because if you see what we do in Colombia, we can see that the drug trafficking has no ideology. And we can see that in what has happened in Colombia, We can see that the origin people, not indigenous, they thought that he had arrived to India, and he hadn't. He was in Aptajala. He arrived to America. You are American, and we are as well, with all due respect. And I would like for the ambassador, Mr. Palmieri, to have stayed, because we can see that the main structure that we have, it's that war of communism. Right now, we have a government that it's been elected Democrats, and here in this government, we love the Colombian government, and as we've always loved the peoples in the world. And as we can say, you've heard them, and we are the keepers of the world. If the Amazon is over, the U.S. is over, and no more Canada, and also Russia as well, the China. And this is a calling. This is a calling for you to support the struggles. But we can say that there's no bureaucracy with all the money of the North American people in the hospitals and all over the place, and having dinner, etc. And whilst over there, there's people that are represented in the peoples, and some that we see over here, and they are suffering, especially drug dealing, and we can see that all these criminal structures that send cocaine to the U.S., they are sending people illegally, and they think that there are businesses replacing them because they are not changed to be able to let go of the violence with which we're making the Amazon, Caquetá. You can see, you heard the voice of a man, you heard, because, and nowadays they were here, they're over here to expose themselves publicly, because these people, as the ones that I'm saying, and I wanted to apologize, but with a lot of about the people in North America, it's that you needed to support, and that at least that President Gustavo Petro is trying to save the world from the Amazon, from Orinoquia. And you were saying this, if there's no water, and if the water, it's because of the oil production, why not we think differently, and we produce taking care of nature, and let's remember and we can say the world globe, because it's not flat, because and we can say that no government, that not wise man, that nobody can lead us to leave to the. Thank you so much. Somebody else in the U.S. would like to give a response.
Bien, hola, muy buen día a todas y todos.
I am Marco Romero, a direct voice organization that works on forced displacement. And I would like to add additional point to the one that has been proposed in the agenda about environmental crisis and its relationship for human rights, to identify 2 or 3 more opportunities of collaboration in this dialogue between Colombia and the U.S. We have heard about progress, especially those coming from court with different aspects. The Constitutional Court of Colombia reiterated, and I say reiterated because that recognition took place before, that there are forced displacement due to environmental reasons, and there is complex relationships of different categories, not only the general ecological crisis and natural disasters, etc. Normally in Colombia, displacement is very difficult to outline properly because it's very associated to armed conflict, and there is a double affectation. So to speak, the humanitarian reasons on one hand, armed conflict and dynamics of control of the violent parties to get hold of different territories across the country. But there is an opportunity, as I said before, and new scenario for cooperation between Colombia and the U.S., and that is to enforce the rulings of Constitutional Court. They actually pick up on rulings that comes from 98, even before, from a more limited scenario. The idea of recognizing displacement due to national resources or disasters caused by human beings. Actually violent interventions in the different territories. So this is an important point to back this view that the Constitutional Court is bringing, and that comes from other international scenarios as well. Also, the Colombian state, along with the Chilean government, is requesting an opinion from the human rights courts and here in the Americas to see what is the responsibility of states of human rights in respect to climate change. Brazil also have consultations, and we hope that from there we can derive clear consequences and responsibilities, given that the Colombia, U.S. and Colombia have shown great interest on this topic of energy transition and mitigation of climate change. But in 2021, we will have here in Colombia an important consultation regionally, in this case, and follow up to the declaration of Cartagena, a declaration to protect refugees, about climate change, forced migration, human mobility, displacement. Colombia is the host of this meeting. A consultation has been taking place in Chile, another one in Brazil. Now this is the turn for Colombia. I think it's the first time this issue will be discussed, but there are very concrete proposals. The representative, the rapporteur of the United Nations for Climate Change and Human Rights, recommended that Cartagena Declaration extends definition to the protection of forest displacement across borders, thinking crises like the one in Honduras, that given a severe drought forced 3 million persons to leave the country. So that is the expansion of that scope of the Cartagena Declaration due to climate change among and important national disasters. So this is a good time to have that regional discussion and have a good bilateral understanding so that that topic can be considered. And we think that this factor of human mobility is one variable. There are many more being discussed, but we ask you to consider that as one of the strategic points of view. Many thanks. I think we have more time for other questions. Ana Maria, we have time?
Yo hago lo que me digan. Buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning, everyone. I am Maribel Iguaran. I belong to an indigenous reservation in the middle and high Guajira. I come from that region, and my consultational question goes to energy transition. We have seen energy transition as a solution to the problem of indigenous peoples, but really it has generated displacement and has affected our biodiversity, and there is a negative impact over the environment. Our areas are areas protected, and before the situation of implementing aeolic systems to produce energy, it has affected the pattern of migration of birds and also of some flora. My consultation question is there any experience based on natural resources to confront the situation that, as I said before, has produced not a solution but an internal problem affecting our people in the north part of Guajira? Your question is for which panel member? The colleague from the indigenous peoples? Lila.
Creo que esta problemática la estamos
I think that same problem is being lived by all indigenous people, not only yours. You are living that with the Aloe parks and other communities with solar panels. Other communities are living that with the use of water, produce energy. So all communities are living the same problem. That's why I was saying, so far I know there are no processes that can contribute to the solution of this. There are researchers. There's research going on that can, let's say, confirm that birds and other species of fauna and flora are being affected. Bees are not present anymore in where solar panels are installed due to radiation. So it's not that good at the end of the day. The lifespan of the technological devices or equipment also affect, and the cost of moving Earth to, let's say, exploit the mineral or the resources required to produce the solar panels. So there is good experience. Many people, indigenous communities, are suffering from that. But so we need to look for solutions. How, from the scientific point of view, science community can contribute with solutions to improve that topic of energy transition, because it's not that good, not that, let's say, realistic. Territories are being sold the concept of clean energy, renewable energies, not anymore the exploitation of coal, no mining operations. We are not going to affect Mother Earth, but what you don't know for sure is what is behind that new forms of energy, minerals that are, let's say, rare, and the country has opened a new platform for tenders and bids to exploit and extract this rare earth mineral. So there's no real good change. We are seeing a lot of support for the environment, but we still need to regulate the mining operations with good, let's say, parameters and guarantees, working hand in hand with the environmental corporations. Because when it comes to environmental licensing, well, it depends on the volume of minerals being that company intends to exploit, and environmental corporations really do not perform a good, careful follow-up to find out if the environmental licenses are being complied with or not.
no conozco una
As far as I know, I cannot say there is a good solution to improve the situation being lived right now. We are kind of pilots when it comes to an energy transition, but we will be seeing the consequence of this later on. And I need to be clear in saying that energy transition is not that good. I have seen that in my own community, in Wayus as well. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to contribute, especially to mitigate those negative impacts?
o nos vamos a convertir.
Or are we going to become importers? Oh, we don't know. Thank you, Dalila. You want to? Yeah, something short. And that same problem is translated to the Amazon region. There is no issue of energy transition. We are seeing another very serious problem on the way how carbon markets are working, that it's an approach to mitigation. So we need to go into analysis how the mitigation from the international point of view is reaching Colombia. What is this global south point of view? How are we going to mitigate in Colombia there? Because it has serious implications when it comes to human rights. More than talking about energy transition, I would rather say energy sovereignty of communities. And the strategy shouldn't be local only or national. I think they should be global. In this case, science has indicated that one of the tacit components that can contribute is hydrogen, the production of hydrogen. And For that hydrogen, we need to create technological transformation so that we can have engines that can take that hydrogen, even a mixture called ethane, hydrogen and methane. National University of Colombia knows, my research project, by the way, got to do with that, and that's to use hydrogen to supply boilers, and that has a less problematic component when it comes to the preservation environment. Hydrogen, energy sovereignty, and regionally, Europe has done that, or is doing that already. With the CERT, it has the ITER, or ITER. It's really an issue of countries to assure their energy sovereignty. We in South America, and with the help of the United States government, we can create a big energy cluster around hydrogen. Public companies, utilities company of Medellin is in that, and Ecopetrol is already working on that. It could be hydrogen or the mixture of hydrogen and methane. Yeah, I think that it is a good topic to be discussed in another panel. I think we need to have a comprehensive reading of all this. Development under low carbon conditions, the ATS, the Paris Agreement, the traceability up to 2050. Of course, you cannot make proposals without having read the strategy before. That strategy to 2050. That's one thing I recommend to you. Number two, in that framework of carbon neutrality toward 2050, we have the energy transition concept. If you look at how it has been outlined, it says there what to do, 2027, 2030, 35, and 50. Whatever government is in place, could be right or left or whatever. This is an international commitment. And the other thing that I firmly believe, though, that, for instance, the government of the United States that have been supporting through USAID some research and works, to find out it's necessary to promote that in Colombia or not. Not only the new mining law that is in Congress right now, but rather a special policy for the fragile special territories, or those territories that host indigenous communities, without losing sight that the minerals to be used out of the 7 strategic minerals that the resolution already contemplates, so 009, by the way, is to be done, or is to yes or yes to be done. And without them, there's no energy transition. Without them, there's no electric cars. Without them, nothing for energy transition. So we need to be prepared for a lesser ailment, so to speak. Creating norms, policies, and new standards. In the case of Guajira, we were here, it is an application of European standards that are not good for us. So we need to be very knowledgeable what is good and not good. Many thanks. One last question before we depart to break. Who has the microphone? Good morning, all. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Alejandro Martinez, and I would like to start by making a popular question. Who of you know the National Network for the Environment, of the Youth for the Environment? Oh, good, so good. Several hands up. It's more of a request to the nation and to support us, because we in the territory are conducting activities for the protection of the environment. We have young ones that are empowered in their own territory and say, we are going to work hard for the environment, and we go all for it. We carry out tours and what we call territorial reconnaissance, and we take care of elders, as my panel member said before, so that they can transmit to us that knowledge and wisdom. We have the capacity to understand and know our territories in order to propose solutions and generate activities to, let's say, have a better environment. short message, but I think it's quite good. Many thanks to you all. We are closing. Oh, one more. No problem at all. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're okay. I am Alexander Espria Perea. I'm same as Alejandro. Here I am part of the National Young Ones but I'm also part of the one called Process for Afro-Descendant Communities, and how the connection has with all this. And I want to propose something or make some questions to you. First, observation. To which one you want to address the question? Well, in general, to all of you. So, first of all, this is kind of observation, kind of advertising. We are losing a lot when you are romancing a lot around the Amazon. One thing that it's important, we all know the ecosystemic importance of the Amazon, but we are ignoring or leaving aside other aspects that are also important. The biogeographical Choco, which also contributes a lot to our territory and why not the country. Not only to recognize the biogeographic Choco, the Amazon, of course, but also to recognize the different territories that come in rural areas and urban areas, and they both play an important role because my colleague was saying we go around trips and tours to get to know the biodiversity and the geographic and social conditions of the territory. And to put that in a legal framework under Law 70 of 1993. Article 4 and Decree 1384 that give the communities the right to make a sustainable use of the ecosystem resources and define them as preservation areas to be protected. And now, question for all the panel members, linking that to what my colleague said. Where are the young ones, the youth, and the quality of agency will be provided with to take the right path in order to deal with all these problems we have been hearing? Sounds good that there are many scholars and thinkers around this, but populations that are in the field working with the real conditions, we need to look at that. How this need to be strengthened with our own knowledge? Well, it's got to do with the wisdom and knowledge that people have. Education is part of that to preserve and contribute with knowledge in future and the recognition of communities in that. We are going to attend COP, for instance, but COP is not recognized as a community, different, but rather as local communities in general. We don't have our own scenarios, to build our own identity, not to be called local community. No, this is something we must solve, the panel members and all together. And how to make visible different realities. Yeah, sounds good. We have been hearing from you, and but we are the ones that are living that in the territories. In Cauca, for instance, they're being, let's say, suffering from violence between different armed factions. Are we making that visible as part of the problems that in turn are linked to social economic issues that are being lived in the territories? Anyone wants to answer or comment on that? Yeah. Maybe I want to clarify. To place the Amazon basin as it is now has not been an easy task. It's not been an easy task. It's been a question of organizing ourselves for almost over 60 years, different indigenous national organizations, and unify the opinion of different NGOs, the work of NGOs that work there. But that doesn't mean that the case of the Colombian indigenous movement, we are working on the Amazon only. No, it doesn't mean that. We are always in permanent communication in the 115 indigenous people that exists across the country. Another point. A short while ago, when Marco Romero was saying, when I was kidnapped by FARC, by Mordisco, the guerrilla commander, I was saying, when I lived here, this was from kidnapping, what I'm going to do. During the time I've been enjoying freedom, and I'm here with you, I don't feel like a victim because I am part of an indigenous community of people. The indigenous people, the Colombian one, we always propose as a government. Well, let's talk from government to government, is what we have been saying, because it's from government to the international community. As a victim, we will always be served from top to bottom with little projects, with things that perhaps fix one particular situation but doesn't solve the bottom line problem. I think we need to move forward in this, and when we are saying we are talking government to government, we indigenous people, we are not dividing everything in sectors or segments. To talk about children, to talk about women and youth is to segment the people, and that breaks the society and the family. We need to act as a one block rather. So I'm going to recommend that to you, but that depends on how each one of you is going to see that. We, in our case, we don't feel victims because we are government and we are people at the same time. Many thanks, Mateo. I think, yeah, we need to close now. I cannot allow for more questions because we are modifying the schedule. There's a break now for a few minutes, and then we move into a second panel. Thank you. See you later.
Muchas gracias a los panelistas y a nuestra moderadora. Tendremos un break de 15 minutos. Regresaremos para el segundo panel a las 11:10 a.m. Muchas gracias. al auditorio para iniciar con el segundo panel que hoy nos convoca. Hacemos un segundo llamado para comenzar con el panel de intersección entre la justicia ambiental y la justicia étnico-racial, territorialidad, saber ancestral y reparación. Señor. Claro que sí, claro que sí. Señora. Listo. A ti. Hacemos un tercer llamado para iniciar el segundo panel de la mañana. Igualmente, invitamos al moderador, señor Néstor Garzón, así como a cada uno de los integrantes del panel para que ocupen de una vez los asientos enfrente del auditorio. Invitamos a Joe Banner, a Orlando Rayo, a Alexander Rodríguez Mena y a Lady Bernaza para que ocupen sus asientos. Muchas gracias. Para las personas que requieran traducción simultánea, ya que uno de nuestros panelistas hablará en inglés, pueden retirar sus dispositivos de traducción que están ubicados a la entrada del auditorio. Dispositivos de traducción inglés a español en la entrada del auditorio. Muy bien, retomaremos la conversación en el marco del diálogo con la sociedad civil, que les recordamos que se realiza de manera híbrida, presencial y virtual, con la transmisión en vivo en español a través de las redes sociales del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores. Recuerden que nos encuentran en YouTube, Facebook y X como @CancilleríaCol. Le damos entonces la bienvenida al nuevo panel titulado Intersección entre la justicia ambiental y la justicia étnico-racial, territorialidad, saber ancestral y reparación. Este panel busca discutir sobre la protección y conservación de los territorios de las comunidades étnicas, la preservación de sus saberes ancestrales y el avance hacia una reparación
and the movement towards comprehensive reparation about the non-proportionate impacts suffered due to climate change. In scenario and stage, we are accompanied by Nestor Garzón, Director of Climate Change of the Environmental and Sustainable Development Ministry, who will be acting as moderator for this panel. Likewise, we are accompanied by special guest Joe Banner, PhD from Louisiana State University, co-founder and director of Descendants Project, a nonprofit foundation committed with the protection of communities, Afro-descendant communities in the United States. Likewise, we are accompanied by Orlando Rayo, Senior Counsel of Indigenous Reservation ONIC in Colombia, of the Yagua people of Ardilla clan, over 20 years experience in local leadership and regional leadership. Likewise, we are accompanied by Alexander Rodriguez Mena, Warden of the Atrato and member of Cocomasia, of the peasants community, and we are accompanied by Ladi Berbaza, governance leader of the Community Council of Rio Patia Grandes and Tumaco Bay Alcapa. Moderator, you have the floor. Good morning, all. It's for me to act as moderator for this panel. I want to make this presentation a little bit broader in comparison to what the stage master did. And I'm going to refer in detail to each one of the participants joining us today. We hope to have a good, joyful conversation. And I will start by introducing Joe Banner once more, PhD from Louisiana State University, co-founder and director of Descendants Project. It's a nonprofit organization, foundation, committed with the Afro-descendants community of the United States. As part of this work, Dr. Banner is in the front line against racism, petrochemical plants in Louisiana. Likewise, Orlando Rayo is an indigenous people coming from Buenos Aires, Cotuni, in Cinta Reservation, Tarapacá, Amazon, with over 20 years leadership, locally and regional leader. As senior counsel, he presides and coordinates the governance council and charge of strengthening local justice, the creation of the indigenous national wardens in conjunction with the state to preserve this history and struggle of indigenous people. We also are accompanied by Alexander Rodriguez Mena. He is warden of the Atrato, a member of Cocomasia. Cocomasia is the senior counsel of the Comprehensive Peasants Community in Atrato River. He, as a warden, works in the preservation of Atrato River, one of the most important ecosystems in Colombia, and in the defense of rights of Afro-descendants and indigenous communities that live along Atrato River. His job, promote social environmental justice as well as guaranteeing the compliance of environmental rights that are recognized across the region. And finally, we are accompanied by Vladi Bernaza. She is the leader and activist born in Tumaco, governance counselor of the Community Council of Patia River. There are different branches, and Tumaco, Ensenada, Tarapacá. Public administrator graduate and business leadership and for the preservation of forests in the Colombian Pacific region as part of the Red Mass portfolio. So having said this, I would like to set the guidelines of this panel. What we will be doing to start with is to generate one question, and we would like to obtain from panel members what is the perception against that same question, like for all. Then we will have one specific question focusing on each one of them is doing, and finally we will have participation. No, due to time, we will be adjusting that on part of the audience so that you can address or pose a question to the panel members. Let's start with Joe. Question for you, or for all of us. What do you understand, or what is your perception of what is the relationship of ethnic justice and climate justice?
You for that question. Apologies that I cannot speak Spanish, but I am learning after this moment. And I really want to just say, first of all, what an honor it is to be in this beautiful country. It reminds me so much of Louisiana, seeing the green around. However, I'm not used to waking up and seeing clouds outside my window. We live at or below sea level, so being up this high is really is different and welcomed. For me, the connection between racial justice and climate justice and environmental justice, it all honestly connects to racism. It goes back to what people like my ancestors, what I face right now, but when I think of my enslaved ancestors who were brought over to the United States in order to work the different plantations in Louisiana, this is something, part of the system that we are still feeling right now. My ancestors were sacrificed for economy. And what we're seeing right now is descendants like ourselves are facing that same issue. And as our health is being impacted by the pollution that's in our area, the climate is also being impacted as well. And the climate globally is being impacted as well. So what we're finding now is community members, particularly those who descend from the enslaved, who now are on the border of plantations, that have become petrochemical companies, these communities are facing health risks like never before. I live in an area called St. John the Baptist Parish. That is in between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. If you've ever been to Louisiana, if you ever heard of New Orleans and the great food and great culture there, we live very close to that area. But this area is known as Cancer Alley as well because of the amount of pollution that's in the area caused by different heavy industry, particularly petrochemical companies. But as our community members are facing these illnesses from pollution, the climate is changing. The climate is becoming more and more challenging. We're facing hurricanes. We have, I think it's been predicted, we'll have one of the most active hurricane seasons that we've had on record. We have storms that are coming through that are stronger and producing tornadoes and other flooding and other issues. So community members are sick. And at the same time, we have climate issues where we're losing power, we're losing access to medical care. So it is just really a lot of issues facing us right now. I honestly have to say that if my community was a predominantly white community, I do not think we would have the issues that we're facing right now because of zoning laws that keep pollution in our area, that keep our area acknowledged as a sacrifice zone. So we see this playing over and over and over again to Black communities or descendants of the enslaved like we are around our area. So I think that when we look at climate justice or climate injustice, environmental injustice, it's an easier way of saying racism. And oftentimes it's easier for us to say those words without really addressing the issues that the system of slavery still has over our communities, particularly one in Louisiana like I come from.
Thank you, Joe. We'd like to continue then with the same question, but this time for Alexander Rodriguez. Good morning. Let this be the opportunity to greet you all, colleague members and panel, and I want to address this question now. I think that there is a profound relationship race justice, environmental justice, or ethnic justice, as he called it. But from the people's point of view, I come from the people, from a village, and because I was born in this village along a river, I see that there is a balance between myself or the persons of my village with that environment where we live that has been with us. So that generates a very strong territorial relationship, creating a kind of marriage. And that environmental justice is present there with the ethnic justice. So what I think is important, I must say that here, is that a public policy should be in place from government, allowing that marriage link that exists between what is the ethnic and the environment is gets stronger and stronger, because what we are seeing today, rural peoples, ethnic peoples, is that marriage that comes from ancient times, that has been built by us, living as ethnic race and environment, it's being threatened and degraded precisely because of lack of assistance, the lack of policies, allowing that black guy or woman or indigenous person to keep that balance, to keep that marriage, allowing him to, or hindering him from developing himself, to keeping that kind of relationship he has been living for many, many years. And I think we see every day, the news, etc., how the Colombian Pacific coastline, Choco to be precise, because it's where I come from, it's today the center of the breaking of that balance, or that breaking of that ethnic environmental justice, precisely because communities are being taken and forcing them to break down that link because of the presence of illegal artifactions, planting illegal crops in their land and forcing them to plant the coca. So what is happening is that balance it's in danger, losing that ethnic justice and that relationship with the environment. And it breaks because the black people are not what they were in the past, losing their cultural characteristics because they are being imposed certain activities, and those activities take them away from the cosmovision, a way of living, keeping that unmarked relationship with that land, with that territory. So even though it's true that for ethnic people across the country, in this case, Choco and Atoto, that marriage has existed for many years, today is on the brink of losing or breaking down due to their circumstances and there are, let's say, in our territory. So this is a call for you to understand that reality. I want, by the way, to congratulate our previous panel members, because I think that everything is connected. Someone commented before me that this is not a struggle of black ones and peasants, indigenous. This is a struggle of everyone. It's a struggle for the entire country, universal. And I think we all have a high level of commitment to confront climate change, to save humanity, and of course, to continue living in this planet.
Gracias, Alexander.
Thank you, Alexander. So let's continue now with the next panel member. Can you give us your opinion about the same question? Good morning. I have a pleasure to greet you all on behalf of the Colombian indigenous movement, 115 indigenous peoples that exist in this country. The macro region, the jungles of the mountains and deserts and seas where indigenous people live, taking care and keeping life for entire humanity. I think the first thing we need to observe and say is how we are behaving with ourselves. If we want to be at peace and have justice with the environment, we have to, live in peace with nature. Well, let's think inwards as human beings. Is we are living at peace, in peace with our own selves, indigenous, Afros, whites, mestizos, and all of us who live here. Are we really at peace with ourselves? Are we behaving well? Are we living well in our homes, in our jobs? Are we doing everything right? Or is just a lie, saying that we are living in peace with nature, with justice? No, and that's not, it's a lie because we are seeing a climate change crisis, an environmental crisis. So starting from the principle taking care of life and keeping that balance between man, can, and nature, and to be part of that balance, have that balance, I need to have a territory. And the first territory is my own body. And if that is the case, we can then speak about the other physical territory. And we know that we believe that the Creator gave us a territory to live, to have knowledge, to keep that right balance between man and nature. If we are doing things right, well, it's okay. But we are taken and moving, let's say, to our zone and causing harm to the home of our brother or causing harm to the another territory, if we are invading the other territory, if we are ill-treating the others in other territories. We in the Amazon said our tobacco or coca or manicuera is not there to cause harm. It's actually to take care and keep life, to keep that balance that should exist between mankind and nature. Thank you, Orlando. So let's move and to end this first round. Same question for all of you. I want to leave you with a la abiertas. Thank you. First of all, to say that one of our lady leaders says, black man, black woman, it's the power of the Pacific coastline. And with that, we are understanding that our territories can be kept provided there is that harmony. When we speak about justice, in our case, as a community, black community, Afro descendants, so I'm going to say a word, she said, parenthood. How we living along with our own environment, and how those that arrive, we call them paisas or colonials, foreigners, come in to put and balance that environment or that territory. And I was talking a short while ago with someone and saying, when we talk about environmental justice, we need to know that we as community and indigenous people, we as a people, need to continue transmitting the knowledge and wisdom to live in harmony. But institutions does perhaps the same but differently. And who has the pen, well, has the power, can write the laws and provision, and how that is hitting us directly. In this case of justice and the council exists in our territory, not only the community council, but the councils in Tumaco, Francisco Pizarro, that is the case. Back in 1980s, we have been talking about the border that exists between farming and the jungle. The African palm tree to produce oil, edible oil, actually was the first factor that introduced that imbalance in our territory. How that has been affecting us. And justice is also to see how women, in this case, the kids and mothers are the ones that are bearing the most damage because of that environment being spoiled. the parenthood, no? And institutions, organizations do not recognize that. They have a different point of view. Contamination, pollution has brought, we are expanded families. And that means that the son of the neighbor, of the sister, or whatever, is also your son. And that concept is important for us in our territory. But all issues around pollution produced by several companies have meant that many women cannot bear children. No, because our rivers are being contaminated by mercury. And in our case, not only is that, but the extraction of other materials, not only gold, but other materials. And the expansion of illegal crops is also affecting us. And maybe you can say, okay, we can protect, we try to keep that balance, but those come from outside. The outsiders come in and they do what they wish. And they do, no, they bring the word development, desarrollo, and that, no, it's everything. And that is threatening all communities that live in the territory and also the environment, affecting water, air, and the ground, the soil. And there is no other plan. This is the one we have. And so what to do to reach consensus how far can we go? Because really, I must say it's not that easy. We are talking the Amazon as the world's lung, but in some places that's being debated, but in the ground we need to preserve and keep at bay the agricultural border. No, and of course that's not happening, and it's hitting us hard. We need to have all men and women. How can I put it? Just one song, one, yeah, song, and that song is not to sing it, but to take it inside into our soul, and say how, from the productive point of view, farming or not, take this issue and not to harm Mother Earth, because that is not true. That is not, but at least not to do it in the same way it has been done in the past, poison and killing Mother Earth, and we are, by the way, killing ourselves. Thank you, Larry. Okay. The purpose of all this was to identify from each point of view of you, the panel members, your own work, to understand that difference that exists and connection that exists at the same time between ethnic justice and climate justice, or environmental justice, as you wish to call it. And we find some similarities, and the versions we have heard from each one of them. We see the different projects and relationship between state and parties that live in the territory. Others are arriving there, but the projects that are being developed there have impacted negatively. Well, not always, sometimes positively, of course, but we are generating problems in those territories, and we need to go back and check that situation to put a remedy. That's what I was able to gather from the answers given by panel members. Now, let's move to the second question with more detail around your own work. One question for each panel. For Joe, we want to ask you, how would you describe the relationship between environmental justice and racial or ethnic justice based on your own experience as activists in Louisiana? What focus do you consider more efficient to address the different problems that you are living for the benefit of the group?
Thank you for the question again. For my, first of all, I just want to say, and I think this is probably relevant for all of the people that have spoken today. The reason why that we're here on the stage is not because we're against something so much, it's because we're for something. We're here out of love. We're all here to just communicate the love we have for our communities and our heritage, even when we're facing so much. What always stands out to me is how much I hear from everybody of how much they love their area and their families. And I wanted to just frame that because so often when I'm in these conversations, we're seen as the anti this, the anti that, but we are the pro. We are the pro, we want our communities to grow and to thrive the way they have for generations. So I want to state that first. For my work and just connecting that, I am 10th generation Louisianian, and when I'm in other countries where we have, cultures that have been there for like 1,000 years, it doesn't seem like that much, but in America it is, to be from somewhere for 10 generations. My family has been in the area for over 300 years. So we have been blessed to just carry on that tradition and live in the same community that my ancestors created in a sense. What we find though in my situation is that we often have other people who try to come in and take what we have and then use that against us. So now we are in the wrong as natives who've been in our area. We have a lot of people coming in under the guise of economic development, seeing our connection to land, and then trying to rip that land away from us, trying to rip that well-being away from us. We are considered underdeveloped. We're considered, we want to have more infrastructure brought to the area. Land is not considered infrastructure. The land that was tended by my ancestors, that still being tended by my relatives. So what that is, what's happening is that we have these companies that want to bring in industry, particularly heavy industry of all sorts, to rip us away from that land and to make money. We are constantly fighting that battle against our government. We constantly have our community, our administrators who are on the side, who have been totally captured by corporations. I was looking at some of the figures of Louisiana and the exports to Colombia. And the largest exports to Colombia was refined petroleum and corn. And wouldn't you believe, in my community, you know what we're facing issues from? Petrochemical pollution and a grain export terminal that's trying to locate in our community that would make us, we would have to move away from the community that we've been a part of for many generations. So this is what we face, pollution and threats from all different directions. What's happening here is an international human rights crisis in Louisiana, and the world is participating in that. And especially when you have ports. We have the Port of South Louisiana, which is the port of my area, the Port of Cancer Alley. And they're continually moving petrochemicals, moving these other fertilizers, all these other things that are poisoning our communities. And they brag about it. They brag about the 43 million short tons of petrochemicals they move through the area, but they don't brag about the cancer rate. They'll say, oh, that's your lifestyle. That's because you eat too much fat and you have too much salt in your diet. So not the cancer causing chemicals that are being produced by these big petrochemical companies, and in a particulate matter that's coming from other type of pollution, that doesn't count. So it's really identifying these industries and the narratives that they have placed upon our communities. It hurts me so much when I hear my residents in my area talk down about their own history and the preservation of their history. And they're adopting the language of these corporations that say, you need a job. We must get you a job, as if these companies own the patent for job creation, as if this is the only type of jobs that are existing. And it's beyond jobs, it's about our lives. And guess what? There are jobs in other industries as well. We have a strong and vibrant culture and heritage area. I bet most of you know us because of our food and our music. But that's not acknowledged. That's seen as kind of a, it's just a one-off kind of, it's like, it's fantasy. It's not real. It's not a real industry. So what we are trying to do, at least in our work as a Descendants Project, is connect to our heritage and culture, let our community know that the importance of having that connection and knowing that we had our own agency for generations before these petrochemical companies or other heavy industry came into our area. We knew what we were doing. We were able to survive, and we don't really need anyone else to survive but ourselves. So that's what our work consists of, making sure that we're doing that, as well as challenging the system through legal means. We are systems change. We are all about making sure we can get our community away from the systemic hold to slavery that we still have in our policies and our laws. So we also tackle the issues from that side. Thanks.
Joe, muchísimas gracias por tu respuesta. Vamos a continuar con Alexander Rodríguez. Alexander, la pregunta que tenemos para ti es, basándote en tu experiencia como guardián del atrato y en la implementación de la sentencia T-622 del año 2016, la cual reconoce al río Atrato como un sujeto de derechos, ¿podrías compartir con nosotros tu visión de las comunidades étnicas del Atrato sobre la protección de sus ecosistemas y su papel en la lucha contra el cambio climático? ¿Qué aprendizajes y qué desafíos han surgido en el marco de este proceso?
Bien. Bueno, me parece importante contarle aquí a la audiencia, pensaría yo que todo el mundo ya sabe, y digo todo el mundo, todo colombiano ya sabe qué es la TC22. Saben que es una sentencia que marcó un hito histórico en este país, en la jurisprudencia, y no me voy a referir a ella en su elemento fáctico ni en lo jurídico. Quiero simplemente como limitar un poco a la pregunta, pero es decirle que también esta sentencia que salió para Colombia, Latinoamérica, para Chocó y especialmente para el Atrato, mi Atrato River, ese que me dio nacer y me dio crecer y que abrazo todos los días de mi vida, o si no nos vemos todas las mañanas. Ha sido tan importante porque en primera medida permitió o logró que varias organizaciones o autoridades étnico-territoriales, aun cuando seamos chocuanos y chocuanas todas, tenemos unas particularidades, pero en esta vez y en este propósito nos permitió unificarnos en torno o de cara a una estabilidad social, pero en pro también de una transformación y un apego, un arraigo, pero también a salvar el territorio con todos los elementos que lo caracterizan. Si bien es cierto, aquí se habla de la sentencia que declaró el río Atrato, ese cuerpo de agua, pues no solamente esos derechos son para el río Atrato, esos derechos son para el territorio, esos derechos son para las personas que tienen esa relación diaria, permanente y de vida con el río. Entonces, desde esa perspectiva es contarle a ustedes que como guardián comunitario, que no tenemos la responsabilidad, aclarar aquí que los guardianes somos 14, que obedecemos a 7 organizaciones, y yo soy de Cocomacia. Hemos 7 hombres, 8 hombres y 7 mujeres, porque por alguna circunstancia, precisamente por el tema de orden público, en el río Quito, uno de los ríos más contaminados por mercurio de Chocó, por el orden social y público, las mujeres no quisieron asumir el rol de guardiana, por ello hay 2 guardianes. Pero yo, como miembro del colegio de guardianes, esto no
Allow us, first of all,
tener un mayor nivel de conciencia en las comunidades, porque aun cuando somos pueblo, somos río, a veces desconocemos lo que tenemos y por muchas razones, por acción o omisión, incurrimos en situaciones o acciones que afectan lo que hoy todos estamos defendiendo y queremos defender y que estamos luchando.
and we are fighting to preserve the Atrato. What have we done for climate change? I think this really, besides containing important elements that go from, let's say, recognition of a territory to start with, the existence of a culture, the existence of people that live along the river, establishes the ways how, from the community point of view, diversity can be safe, environmental can be safe, and ecosystems can be safe. All that live around the river can understand now that the ruling is not only for the improvement of the environment, the quality of life of the people living around the river is going to be improved, but we need to make sure that our territory is not the victim anymore of certain economic activities, such as the forest industry and so from that point of view, to demand to the government.
Okay, but we've worked as a community because we know that we're the owners of a territory and that in certain way we have a responsibility in taking care of it, because in my case, we're older and we're going to go somewhere else soon, but we want to leave it to the new generations, a territory that allows them to live with dignity, that allows them to enjoy the right of a healthy environment, that it's in the political constitution. In this way, I think that'll work. And then the struggle against climate change is to see how we have a higher level of knowledge. Well, first of all, some actions that we're doing in the territory or that have been done by third parties have affected or the human life and also the environment. But above all, over here, we have tried together as a community to see in all the circumstances that like the territories like El Choco and others live. It's something that we've allowed us to see the possibility of how do we survive or how can we negotiate carbon that allows the people to not continue cutting down the forest, and that we can apply a policy that the people is aware and take care of what they have. But this is something that will not solve all the problem. But this is what the community can say to create a lot of resistance so that the territory, it's not affected, it's not impacted by the different stakeholders for illicit crops and for mining, but also it requires that the Colombian government and leverage in their efforts, and also by the U.S. government that's been supporting strongly, and we can move forward, but we also need to move forward with the territories. I think that these high-level dialogues that we've been hearing, that some had the possibility to come here, and as the panelists are here, but with the ones that we need to make things much more democratic or much more decentralized. These dialogues need to be taken to the territory. They should be taken to the communities. They should be taken to the people that for many years have been working, trying to save the environment, but they have never been acknowledged because they're not professionals. But my thing is that this dialogue is very important because we're being heard, but at the same time, sitting here, we're not going to be able to solve this issue. The problems are going to be solved in the territories with the people that's living, that's living, it on a daily basis. But nowadays, with the court judgment has allowed us to be able to do this. The challenge is, and that we can say that nowadays when most of us, they don't have the capacity to contain. We organize ourselves to be able to avoid this type of things. There is a group, there's a smaller group, but very strong, that you know who they are, that are against of what we do and that they threaten our lives. And this is very complex. This is very complex. How we they are looking for how we keep on intervening in the territory, and how we from illegal mining, how we don't allow for cocoa, and we don't have the capacity as a community to stop them. That's why I would like, and therefore, this has been of the challenges. How can we move forward with this versus the situations that we currently live, not only in Chocó, but we can read the news every day, and we know what happens in the territory here. We know, but and therefore, what we see are the ones that are moving forward, and that's the possibility of, and these are the big challenges that we have to keep on moving forward with the conviction that these struggles, it's not because the Constitutional Court, and therefore, we can see that TC22, its part, it rises because of strategic claim from all kinds of meetings that set us to talk with the governments, to talk about our issues, but also to contribute solutions for what's required. And that's what the TC22, and according to my experience, this is what has allowed our communities to work with the communities, but also we also require this government support because we can't do things on our own. And sometimes we lack human resources as well as financial resources to be able to do this. And it would be great that this is not something that is just something that we do between Afro communities or between peasants, but it's a collective thing. And this is so important.
Es, eh, actualmente en el país se han generado otro número de situaciones similares, de otros ecosistemas que han sido declarados como sujetos de derecho. Recientemente el parque, por ejemplo, Isla Salamanca. Yo quisiera para todos que nos indicaras de manera breve algunas experiencias positivas, algunas enseñanzas muy precisas que pudiéramos tener en cuenta para otros procesos que se están desarrollando, que en otros territorios pudieran decir, allí hicieron esto y se lograron cosas importantes. ¿Qué mensaje podríamos darle a todos esos procesos que actualmente se
And this is what the statistics are showing. But today, when we start seeing this, for us, the and they left us a thought. They left us some elements. Left us some elements to take care amongst us, the humans, but also the spiritual world. And we are not.
De nosotros los humanos.
We are not okay. The vegetables, the humans, of all the animals, the spiritual, what we can have in the environment. It's to say that's our governance, and the fact that we work in conservation. No, we're not. Because there's a sentence that whatever moves indigenous peoples eat. Therefore, it's not to say that we preserve things. No, what we do is that we keep the balance between man and woman, between man and nature. For example, if today I want to go fish, I need to talk with the spirit of fish so that the fish doesn't warn me. That's why I need to talk to the spirit. I need to ask and to say, okay, I'm going to go. And I'm going to look that because my creatures, they need to, but we are not. And if I want to do an arrow at a bow, I need to ask for the spirits of the street and say I'm gonna get to do this and to protect. And we don't do that. And therefore, but they allow us is that we do wrong. What we do wrong, if we don't do this query, if we don't request with our elements, well, we're going to have issues. We are going to have diseases. And we are going to have any kind of thing that's going to happen on a daily-by-day basis because we get sick, because we got, we developed a fever. And we're always going to be there. And this requests that. And why in our territory, if we don't preserve things, why do we keep that relationship? Because we're gonna, and we need to do the fruit dances. Why? Because we needed to protect, we needed to, and they don't harm us, but also we don't need to harm them either. There has to be that balance. There has to be, we need to work, we need to be in constant interaction. We just chop down a tree whenever we want to. We cannot just go fishing whenever we want to. No, we can't go hunting whenever. No, it's in the moment in which we had asked and we are allowed to. And that it's something, all the elements, all the word, all the thought, and also the way the government, and what we can say, the basis and the principles that they left us are part of the knowledge system, which is what keeps this balance and that keeps all this environment. When we separate men on one side, women on the other side, the youngsters somewhere else, and also the grandparents and somewhere else, and the leaders are somewhere else, we damage the knowledge system and we have issues. And this is when we have big issues. It's to say that democracy, inclusion, participation, it's leading us to damage the environment, to not be at peace with nature, to have no real governance in the territories, in the peoples, in the communities. It's to say this is where we are failing. That's why we keep our knowledge system and the contribution that we have to the humankind. It's that knowledge system, and it's what we say that everything that we've been able to maintain, that we, the indigenous peoples, have been able to preserve and maintain, and to conclude. And if men or human beings don't take care of each other between the different peoples, between the different societies. How are we going to have this balance, and how are we going to do social justice and territorial and if we don't talk to each other, if we don't have the possibility that if we think that if we step into the culture of others and into the knowledge systems and the governance of others, we are doing more than we can to do forward. And this country requires a very strong structural change in their way of thinking in human beings, and to see who am I, to acknowledge ourselves, who am I, where I come from, what's my clan, what's my group, what's my territory. And why do we say it? Because this country cannot be changed either with the right or left, or with the centers, or with the absorbing thoughts that we have. We cannot change the country that way. This country and our lives need to change thinking ourselves as humans. How do I help my brother? How do I help my sibling? What does my sibling give to me? What word I don't know? What word I don't know, so that I can learn from my sibling? And what word can I teach my sibling that it's not like me, that it's not like my person, and that I help him to develop the abilities of my but it's not me, it's not the one I know, it's not and I'm the one who imposes. But if we have no dialogue, if we cannot talk, we cannot move forward. Thank you. They tell me that we have no time. We're not going to have space for the questions by the audience, but we are going to close with the last comment by Ladi, with the questions that we have for her. How can the sustainable use of natural resources as cocoa contributed to racial justice of ethnic communities in the region of the Pacific, especially in Nariño? Can you please share some examples about how this have helped local communities but to improve their well-being? And something very important is to check out the role of the woman, and especially of the Black women of the Pacific. And therefore, we can see that the woman is the person that gives life, but also the person that transmits knowledge. And from there, and therefore, after we worked on the protection and also and therefore the environment. And therefore, not only the cultural part, the structural part, it's something that it's essential. And in the territories, because the truth is that our women here, I can see that have that spirituality, and not this spirituality with the plants, and also with the spirituality with the water, with the element, and the knowledge to our children. And this is associated how without we don't do damage, and how we can do less damage to our territories, but also how we in the Pacific, and how from the productive part, how women have contributed to those changes, and therefore to generate the possibility that we can stay in the territory. Because what happens when you see and is that the people are leaving from the territory, and that's why the productive part are aging. And this is happening about some things, and the thing is that the study takes her kids back, and they go to the capital city, they come to Cali, they go to different places, and some of them don't come back. And we as women, and old women like me, are saying that if we have cocoa, chilma, green plantain in our territory, and this also, and how can we start to do transformation processes because the product can go. In my case, I was saying I'm part of the Red Mas of the Red Mas communities with the support of USAID in the Pacific, and also with from Choco to Nariño we have 8 Red Mas projects. Our node is called the Tumaco node. And from 2009, we're talking about a lot of women, and they say, "Hey, we have fish, but we also have cocoa, but we also have plantain." But what happens? The best cocoa in the world is from Tumaco. That's it. That's the end of the story, and that's why we've been organized. We've been working in some women association to be able to work on transformation, but this transformation considered as farmers, as women that work in the Pacific, and then community leaders, it's so that our children that are working and are studying, return to the territories, and they come back, and that's why the invitation is please visit Tumaco. I call it the Pacific. It's the best area to live in the world. In the Pacific, you can fall asleep with the waves, and you wake up with the chirping of the birds. In the Pacific, we all live fun. We'll have fun. Why? Because this has been transmitted to us. But as I don't talk about culture, but how as we women are contributing. It's that. It's to check out what we have in farming. It's first of all, it's the preservation of our forest. We have the best mangroves in the world. Oh, yes, the Pacific has the best mangroves in the world. And there, it's where we have this is where we have like the cradle of this species that then go to the sea. There are like the nurseries are in the mangroves, and that's why we have a lot of women that live from Piangua. But that gets to Peru. The one that we get in Piangua, it's the same that we get from Mosquera, Tumaco, from Francisco Pizarro. And what that we do, we have to see how we as women, not only do we extract it and that take that product, but how we can transform it on the field. And the calling, it's the policies that need to be adopted, is to see how from the communities we can do transformation, but this transformation has an impact so that our communities don't need to displace, so that they keep on protecting the forest. We have to give them opportunities to the young people, but also the tools for them to work. I work in cocoa and coconut, and women we're doing small scale transformation, and therefore we do this. We have a lot of, and we have cocadas. We have kind of products that are derived from coconuts, but we also have a store. And go to Mr. Coco. That's a store. You can visit it in Tumaco. But what we want is for women. And if we do a transformation, but also we move, and therefore we need to take care of our children, and because we can transform life. And therefore we have a lot in the territory, but we're not taking advantage about it. And therefore we had tons of hectares to grow palm or whatever, but now we need to do what the colleague said. It's that the people would say that Black communities, indigenous communities were lazy. No, but we have to think about the new generations, and these new generations have to see that from this piece of land that we have over here, we are going to get the rest, and from there we're going to transform to be able to improve the conditions in the territory itself. And therefore that our children learn to appreciate that transformation of the country helps us to be in our villages in a very dignified manner, but also to protect the river, the air, and protect the forest. And as I say, as we as people in the Pacific, the mangroves are not just regulators; they are barriers. And therefore, if we live, we're living from the effects of climate change, and in big way, we are We, um, therefore, as because of the tides, we have very strong winds. And today your house is there, but tomorrow maybe not. But the thing is how we can resist in the territories to transform, to maintain them, to be able to preserve them. And it's not just that we have a transformation policy because our grandparents our grandparents always told us there's only one planet Earth, only one. And therefore, if you're going to be here, because this is what they are lending you, take care of it, But that's a task, but not only from the women of the Pacific or the Amazonia region, it's something that we all have to do. Because I say that the problem is in the home. It's in the home, and the people that educate us, we the women, well, men as well, are playing a role in regarding education at home. But my grandmother would say, and it's that wisdom was given to women, not to men. That's what my grandma said. That the women is the wisest being. And from there, we can see that we have all this. And when you say, oh, that when there was a very good pharaoh, it's because there was a woman behind it. It's true. Therefore, in all the productive area, the role of the woman is so important, because there are some areas, and here it's very important to say that we, the ethnic communities, and we always try to do the least harm possible to our environment. And it's not, and it's to think. And that's why for the institution, it's important to consider these traditional ways that we have to live in the territory in harmony. But above all, it's that the institutions, in this case, that the ministers and such, they will create some clear policies. Because one thing is what the Environment Ministry says, and something different what the farming saying or mining says. And it's that we need some attention for this, because the development, as you say, it's not just it's to chop some down and to development is seen from different optics and perspectives, and we as the Blanca communities it's good living. It's living together, and living together. It's not just to create; it's to make up a building. And I want you to do a very good exercise. It's look at an area where there's grass, and take off your shoes. And sit down, close your eyes, feel the grass, and communicate with nature. Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much. And we hope to be able to accomplish this goal, and to have a very inclusive space that takes into account the topics of the indigenous communities and the Afro-descendant, raizales, and Palenqueras communities, because the relationship between environmental justice and ethnic. And we don't have space for more questions. I would like, of course, and they were more ample, but as it's expressed by all of you, I would like that if each of us, we had all these messages and that we could apply them in each of the actions that we develop. Thank you so much, and I would like to have a round of applause for all the panelists.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you so much to our moderators and moderate all the panelists. To conclude the dialogue from the civil society, we're going to listen to the delegate of for the Sustainable Development, Nestor Garzón, that's going to give the closing comments on behalf of Colombia.
Es que ya no tenemos tiempo.
We have no time. And we have a lot to do. I apologize, but we're out of time.
Si quieres, permíteme, te paso un micrófono, ¿vale?
I would like to thank each of the people that took out the time to come to this dialogue, to this high-level dialogue with the communities. My name is Clemencia from the Hakaica territory, and I'm a walker. I just want to say a couple of words of what I may conclude from this meeting, and I want to invite to a reflect, to a comment, to some questions. I would like to ask some questions, so that both the Colombian state as well as the U.S. and the communities themselves can take into account. It's very important, the water. If we don't focus in water, we are not going to have, and this planet would transform without human beings, and I think that this is very important. If the U.S. can try to give support to the different initiatives in the territories here, we already talked about that the knowledge and the availability that the communities have. And that's why we do hope that this dialogue takes into consideration and creates real actions in our territories. And okay, I would also like to talk about coke and marijuana, and it's a question because here we've talked about that there's been a degradation of our nature in our territories because of drug trafficking. But I would like to say that that marijuana and coke are transformed for the. And there is because we can see that there are very good properties both in topics associated to in food and in medicine. And here I think that this would be the end of the war. And therefore, if we allow for this sacred plant to be used, and that the properties is used to generate employment and to avoid the migration even towards the U.S. because of the violence that they generate in the different countries, and also the issue of drug trafficking. I would like to invite that we can check out the sacred plants in our territory. It's very important to invite the corporations so that they do mining, but they pay for the environmental, that they do an assessment, and that they do a recovery if possible in the territories where they work. I would also like to invite the U.S. so that they sign what has agreed in the next Biodiversity Assembly, COP16 in Cali. And it's a commitment that really we do hope from the U.S. And it's very important, and it's been mentioned, and that not to have an impact in our taking machinery, but we need to look for solutions that are nature-based. And to finish off, we've had to have the hydraulic adaptation that was destroyed by Bogota River here in the Savannah, and it's many of its rivers. They added machinery, destroying the natural environment and destroying all the ecosystemic connection of our territory. And therefore, we request if they can please help us out, and that if we need to intervene in some other point because of risk issues, that we have a nature-based solutions. And here it's very important, the message of the indigenous communities. We cannot see things in a fractioned manner. We have to see them like as a whole to be able to look for real solutions that are comprehensive to the issues of the territories and of humankind. And just to close off, is that we all depend of all, and thank you for this space. Okay, thank you so much for your comments. Okay, in this order of ideas, okay, just to conclude our dialogue with the civil society, we're going to listen to the Subsecretariat for Democracy, Human Rights, and Work from the Department of State of the U.S., Mr. Enrique Roig.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, first of all, it's been an honor to be here with you today for this very important exchange, and especially in this country where I started my career. And more than 23 years ago, and therefore, and I want to. And there, I want to say that in all countries where I've had to work in these last 3 years, that have been in 23 countries, and the topic of climate change and the climate change and ethnic justice are topics that are extremely important for all the people, for all the world. And the truth is that we are living in a very complex moment. You have seen me very important perspectives about how to approach the current issues of human rights and climate change, and within the context of the building efforts of the efforts here in Colombia, a very clear conclusion. It's the need of placing the people, especially the ethnic communities, in the center, at the center of our efforts. And over here, I would like to acknowledge something that was said by Alexander Rodriguez about the importance of taking these dialogues to the territory. And the truth is to involve our communities in the political decisions that are being taken. And as was another panelist well said, Mateo Estrada, that this is something that we need to do. And therefore, this is something that is associated to the deforestation, corruption, and the violence about the environment advocates, and also reminding what Dr. Banner said. And therefore, we have in a perspective that it's that we're not against anything. And I do think that it is a very important reflection, because what we want to do is to work for our communities. And therefore, as you would know from the beginning, the U.S. has accompanied Colombia in the path towards peace. And that's why we support the negotiations that ended half a century of armed conflict. And based on that, based on the agreement, this has been the hired donor, and that for this, and part of this work has been done by listening and by supporting the civil society. And we are convinced that the best way to protect human rights, it's the means of life and the practice of ethnic communities. It's through the advancement of the peace agreement of 2016. And would have no doubt that as the first international partners of the ethnic chapter, we're still committed to this goal. And today's testimonies show courage to move forward in these important topics that have been interconnected. We wanted to congratulate the panelists for their inspired leadership, and also all of you that are in this struggle. It's notorious that our collaborative task force, it's committed to strengthening ethnic communities, as well as we have seen in our shared commitment of moving forward in the implementation of the ethnic chapter of the peace agreement. And today's event shows the relevance of identifying initiatives that are promoted by the community, as it was said, including those that have been that use ancestral knowledge as a way to share climate change, deforestations, and also violence against social community leaders. As we can say that human rights cannot be in a vacuum, they should be included in the sustainability, environmental sustainability, and in the efforts to be able to share climate change and the economic growth and the participation of the private sector, and also education, health, and migration, and also the cultural preservation. And we're not going to be able to accomplish everlasting outcomes if we are not aware of these connections, not only in today's events, but also throughout the discussions in the high-level dialogue of this level. And the civil societies, building bridges with the civil societies is very important. Both here in the United States, we're totally committed to work in a very tight collaboration with Colombia for the next World Conference on biological diversity, peace for nature. We needed to emphasize the importance of defending the rights of the people to protect and protecting the environment as a way to achieve peace. And that's why, once again, I would like to express my admiration for those that, amongst all these types of obstacles and risks, continue defending their communities and continue building a much more solid democracy. And together, we are able to achieve this mission. And as Lavi will said, I'm ready to go and sit down in the grass and feel the nature after this event. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, señor subsecretario Roig.
Now we're going to listen to the conclusion words of Mr. Nestor Garzón, who's the delegate of the Ministry of Environment and Development.
Bueno, nuevamente muchas gracias.
Once more, many thanks to all of you. And as I indicated while sitting, I would like to have more scenarios, more time to listen, to hear the communities, and to undertake the different dialogues. As I expressed before, when I was sitting there once more, we need a dialogue between government institutions and communities, not only a dialogue on the ethnic side. Personally, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you and to act as moderator. It's it's a good learning, and I would like to thank especially the government of the United States, the Foreign Affairs Office, and the ministry who have collaborated in the building of this dialogue, especially since yesterday, where we had a very productive dialogue between U.S. and Colombia to address all these topics, not only about climate change, but generally speaking, the social problems that exist in our country. We thank the U.S. government for everything the Undersecretary was saying, support that we are hopefully can receive to have a better management of the peace agreement in the country. From the Ministry for the Environment, at least in my condition as Climate Change Director, we have taken notice of all participations and speeches, and we will be doing what is needed so that definitely we can implement the measures and recommendations that were given by community leaders during the different processes we have participated. We will do a good joint work in order to address the different problems we are living and thus have a better country. Thank you.
Y desarrollo territorial. Para concluir, les agradecemos permanecer en sus puestos. Vamos a realizar una presentación sorpresa especial de las mujeres cantadoras del Chocó, con la voz cantante de Noensi Mosquera Martínez, nominada a Mujer CAFAM y ganadora del Premio Internacional de Liderazgo. Le damos de esta manera, con un fuerte aplauso, la bienvenida a la agrupación Bongo de Bojayá.
1, 2. Hola. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Muchas gracias, muy buenos días para todos y todas.
Mis compañeras y yo somos mujeres negras de procesos aquí en Bogotá. Yo soy
Thank you. I'm Nancy Moera of the Bongo. I come from Bojayá, who being in Norway representing my country, that we given the Peace Prize, Nobel Prize, and soon I will be in Paris. And Global Forum from yes. So times of God are perfect, and I'm here with my friends and colleagues to this event, and so good because we have a song for you that we prepared with a collective of Chocó women related to environment. So for you.
Las palmitas, acompáñenos.
Te invitamos al Chocó, es nuestra tierra querida, este es nuestro territorio y dueñas toda la vida. Todas vamos a sembrar semillas de amor y paz, negras, indias y mestizas, toda la chocuanidad. No son tierras sin oficios, todas tienen su función, son reservas forestales y del mundo su pulmón. Existen los humedales, las plantas medicinales, productos de pan coger y es tierra de provisión. Vamos todas, vamos ya, vamos todas para que reine la paz. Vamos todos, vamos ya, en esta tierra hermosa todo tiene que cambiar. Vamos todas, vamos ya, vamos todas para que reine la paz. Vamos todos, vamos ya, porque en esta tierra hermosa todo tiene que cambiar. Las tierras del territorio son todas muy productivas, las tenemos en descanso como nuestra alternativa, y para vivir tranquila en libertad de expresión. Y terminando este cuento, que no haya más corrupción. La minería agresiva, el río contaminó, el mercurio utilizado, muchas especies acabó. Que se acabó el Boca Chico y que se acabó el Dentón, y envenenaron la doncella y el guacuco no apareció. Vamos todas, vamos ya, vamos todas para que reine la paz en el medio ambiente. Vamos todos, vamos ya, porque en esta tierra hermosa todo tiene que cambiar. Vamos todas, vamos ya, vamos todas para que reine la paz. Vamos todos, vamos ya, porque en esta tierra hermosa todo tiene que cambiar. Las tierras del territorio son todas muy productivas, las tenemos en descanso como nuestra alternativa, y para vivir tranquilas con libertad de expresión. Y terminando este cuento, que no haya más corrupción. El aplauso para Colombia y nuestra zona, haciéndole venia a nuestra forestación y a nuestra tierra, nuestra Pachamama. ¡Que viva Colombia! El aplauso es para... Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias
Y
a
para
la
mi compañera.
agrupación. Muchas gracias a la agrupación Bongo de Bojayá por este espectacular cierre de nuestro diálogo con la sociedad civil. De esta manera damos por terminado este encuentro. Esperamos que el espacio abra la puerta para la construcción de nuevos paradigmas que permitan una nación de diplomacia con participación de la sociedad civil. Continuaremos a la 1:30 p.m. con el diálogo con el sector empresarial. Muchas gracias a todos y a todas por su asistencia.